You're starting to see some folks panic about Auburn recruiting.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Charlie Tuesday to all who celebrate. We are joined by Auburn message board legend, the Charlie 5, also known as Kyle Rush, the man over at the barn, auburn.com, Auburn's newest message board. Be sure to go check that out today. But we're going to talk a little Auburn hoops. We're going to talk about the quarterback situation continuing to drag on. But the last 24 hours have been eventful, whether it's like legitimate or just, speculation. But they have been eventful for Auburn recruiting. Dante Core flips. We talked about that on yesterday's show. We all saw that coming from a mile away. He flips from Auburn to Ole Miss. Seems like they've got a backup plan. We'll talk about that in a second. But yesterday, folks start noticing Deuce Knight, who was also at Ole Miss this past weekend, takes down his Instagram. Kyle, what does that mean? And should people be panicking?
Look, anytime anybody does anything on Instagram, especially if it's an Auburn recruit, you automatically expect the worst. Like for a couple of weeks ago, Alvin Henderson posted something about Hayes Fawcett's always on top of it, and everybody's like, "Oh gosh, Alvin's flipping." But in reality, Hayes was gonna, he was about to go over 10,000 yards, and Hayes was gonna help him out with some graphics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
right.
That's what that was about. And now Deuce takes down his Instagram after he goes to an Ole Miss visit, and everybody's kind of, panicking. But I talked to a couple of people and said, straight up, he said he's taking it down for distractions for the playoffs. Their playoffs start this week. So again, it's going to be harder.
Real life context. What?
Yeah, it's going to be harder than it should be. It's going to be more stressful than it should be. And you didn't even have to really be that good to be for this to be like no stress whatsoever. But instead of just being average, you've been epically bad. So I can totally understand. Like, it's going to be a stressful 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, whenever it is. It's going to be a stressful month leading up until signing day, because Auburn has been terrible this year. And from a record standpoint, they've been awful. And then from a point scoring standpoint, they've been awful. I guess the only place you can really point to that says they've, they're making strides on offense is maybe yards, and then yards per carry. That's what Hugh seems to point to often in his speeches. But I totally get it now. Any movement. There was a big deal about him made about him rushing the field. Well, if you remember, Rashaan Evans, there was video of him rushing the field after the kick six, and then he committed to Alabama. Like, if you're at a game where that happens, you're not going to not do it. You know what I mean?
I agree. Like, are you just going to sit in the stands and watch all of your buddies that you're there with?
Because I can't do this because I'm an Auburn commit. Like, no, you're going to rush the field. You're going to enjoy the atmosphere. You're going to have fun.
There was a Georgia player celebrating with the Ole Miss fans. You see that?
That's the funniest thing. That's the funniest thing ever. Kirby just straight up said, "What an idiot." I've never heard that before in a press conference.
Yeah, but you can't get mad at Kirby for calling his player an idiot. Like, that's pretty dumb. Like, why would you do that? It's insane. It's insane. But yeah, if I had to pick today, like, where does Deuce Knight sign? Like, I am saying Auburn, but it's gonna. I think the road there might be, like you said, it's gonna be bumpier than it should be.
There's no reason it should be.
Yeah.
Bumpy. There's no reason it should be bumpy. If you're 500 right now, it's not bumpy. The product has just been so bad. It's so bad on offense. And I can totally understand from Deuce's perspective. Hey, what the heck's going on? Is this what I really want to be a part of? I could see that argument going in that direction. I don't think that's what he's saying. I don't think that's what he's seeing. Or that's what he's feeling, but it shouldn't be this way. You shouldn't have to be sweating it like this, but you're in this position, which is even more amazing that nothing's happened major yet in general, because you would think this thing would already be there would be a lot of movement in this class already. So
you can see folks are trying, like, I mean, Ole Miss with Dante Core and Deuce Knight, and then Alabama's hosted Fagans. I think LSU just did. Was he down there for LSU Bama
this past weekend?
Yeah, and like those kind of seem to be.
I think Jared Smith's another one.
Sure, Jared.
That teams are really trying.
Even though he's kind of seemed to settle down a little bit, but other folks are trying, and like, why wouldn't they?
No, exactly. There's blood in the water. Like they will be circling because of your performance. They'll be circling. They'll be swarming hard. They'll be swarming big time, like over the next several weeks, and it'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. And those last minute bag drops are going to come. And depending on how you do the next 3 weeks, and if you can build any type of momentum, if you build none, you're going to put more stress on yourself. You're going to you're just going to have to pull more attention away from, having to pay attention to the game. It's just not a good spot. There's just so many opportunities to go ahead and put this thing to bed to where you don't have to worry about anything, and you're going to have to stress. Now, if they keep everybody like they expect and they don't have a ton of attrition and they're able to pick off a couple more big ones, I think we'll talk about Shamar Arnaud here in just a second. Yeah. You're able to replace Dante Core with him. You have any kind of luck with Naheem Offord. You hang on to Deuce. Like, what a freaking job that you've done, because you've done it with zero. You've done it with zero results on the field, which is remarkable.
Yeah, in your second season. I mean, I think everybody was kind of okay with what happened last year, all things considered, but I don't think anybody thought that the on-field product and result would get worse, and it has.
Yeah,
it has. I mean, everybody kind of agreed the roster was better and the schedule was easier. And we're looking at assuming you win this weekend, 24.5-point spread. Surely you win this weekend. If not, there's a whole nother conversation, maybe. I don't know. But 4-8, your second year, and you've got a top 5 class coming in. That's just a wild, wild thing that doesn't make it really doesn't make sense.
It makes zero sense.
It doesn't make sense. And everybody said all year, I mean, the naysayers of Freeze and some of those people are Auburn fans, but it's like, we'll wait until it falls apart. And it hasn't yet. And some of these guys that we're talking about that could go elsewhere, it's like still, okay, like let's say a few of those guys that we mentioned go elsewhere, like you're still like the 8th ranked class and you're 4-8. Like that's still ridiculous.
Yeah, you could lose, a couple guys and still be a top 10 class. You're just
right.
You're going to have a bad taste in your mouth regardless. And again, we're not saying there's a list of guys ready to decommit. And I still think we're in a really good spot with Deuce. I think that Auburn's going to continually be the highest. I mean, let's just go ahead and say it, the highest bidder. I think they have the best NIL package for him. And unfortunately, you've gotten to the point now to where you can't not be that guy. So he may cost you way more than you initially planned, but you can't let him go. So that number probably is going to continue to increase because other teams are going to come after him, the main one being Ole Miss. Everything's going to get more expensive. I mean, it just is.
Just win freaking games, man.
All you got to do is win. At 1 point, 2 points, whatever. Just win games. Don't blow it. And you probably have honestly, no joke, Zach. If you're 500 or better right now, you're probably challenging for the number 1 class. You probably have a much better shot at landing, Babalola. You probably have a much better shot at landing Malachi Goodman. You probably maybe already have pulled off the flip of Naeem Offord. I mean, you literally, if at 500 or better, you're the number 1 class. Now, a consolation of a top 5, top 8 classes is still really nice, but man, what could have been? What could have been if they just
think like, don't throw the pick 6 against Oklahoma.
That's
like have some sort of composure against Missouri. And it's just a totally different season.
Completely different.
It's insane.
You make a couple of field goals and who knows what happens. And I don't want to throw, obviously, I'm just saying, we're just naming moments that if they go the opposite way.
Yeah, scoring plays are going to be brought up.
I'll take one. I mean, even in the Arkansas game, you look at the Arkansas game in the second half, if that pass doesn't go off Cam's hands, even with the 5 turnovers in the first half, you might still have a chance to win that game. Like, there's just so many things. If something goes the other way, things could look different. But gosh, I mean, you can't be in that situation where you have to have a crucial play over and over and over again.
No, against teams that we all agree, like, the roster is better, and it's just
it should be better. I think there's some big time deficiencies in areas that probably couldn't fill out on any SEC roster. But yeah, overall, I think it's a better roster, and you shouldn't be where you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of the roster, the quarterback situation continues to drag on. Hugh Freeze touched on it a little bit yesterday. There are some differing opinions on what he actually meant. So let's jump into that in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Kyle, can you imagine buying tickets anywhere other than Game Time?
I can't. I saw a bunch of folks post their ticket pictures from the Game Time tickets they bought from the Game Time at the Houston game this past weekend. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And they definitely had a good time. I think it's safe to say. Yeah. Hey, Game Time, they've got a thing called Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Locked On College for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Kyle, can you imagine buying Auburn gear anywhere other than Alumni Hall?
I can't. It would make no sense. Really doesn't.
So when you go into one of the 3 great in-store locations, one in Opelika in Tigertown, one in Auburn off of College Street, one somewhere in Huntsville. I've heard it's great. When you walk into one of those, give me a few adjectives on like how it makes you feel.
Well, obviously it makes me excited, but this is one thing. If there's one downside, I just wish they had more hats. I wish they had more Auburn hats. And I'm being sarcastic because they have like 100 square feet of hats.
That's right.
It's
the hat wall.
The whole back foundational wall that holds the whole building up is nothing but hats. It's crazy. Any Auburn hat you could ever imagine, from team issued to just the fun different times of hats, they got them.
Yep, they got them, and they've got everything from different shirts from every sport, jerseys,
a lot of buttons,
whatever. Yeah,
if you want to button it up, they got them.
If you're into buttons, top button. Kyle loves the top button more than anything else. But you can shop at Alumni Hall, and if you're not near any of those stores, you can head over to alumnihall.com as well to check them out there. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Hugh Freeze spoke to the media for his weekly presser yesterday and was obviously asked about quarterback situation and talked about Peyton missing time last week. And I mean, based off of, everything we've heard and seen, like, it sounds like Hank was the main guy taking snaps with the ones last week, which makes sense. He's the backup quarterback. His answers, there are some people that said like, oh, it sounds like Peyton's shoulder's okay. And like, I didn't get that out of it.
Yeah.
And I think you agree with me, but I was surprised, like, oh, it sounds like Peyton's back on Saturday. I'm like,
it's fascinating. I listen. I first of all, and here's another thing, is like, I'm not a huge just bench everybody guy. Like I'm kind of middle of the road there.
Not. Right,
I can see both arguments on both sides, but I listen to that. And here's the thing, like, what's the point of saying you got to think about the big picture? What's the point of saying, hey, you got to make some tough decisions and you love your players. You want to love your play. You got to love your players, but at the same time, you got to be thinking about the big picture. What's the point of saying that if it's not weighing heavily on you that you got to make a quarterback change? Like, that's right. I listened to that, and sure, he said Peyton's been solid.
And then Kyle, he was asked twice about, like, well, outside of quarterback, are you thinking about other young guys? He's like, no, everywhere else we're playing young guys. We're playing them. So it's quarterback where we're kind of looking at. It's like,
I'm not sure.
So like, is Peyton done? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
But there's so many people that I think it's the people that want there to be a change that they're like, if there's anything positive, I'm just going to, if there's anything positive said, I totally put up a red flag and blinders. But it's amazing how many people listen to that and are on completely opposite ends of what they believe it means. But I think he's priming us for a quarterback change.
Yeah, we got to look at the big picture. We're still looking at his shoulder. Oh, so Peyton's back. Like, what
he played solid. He played solid, so that means he's back. You know what I mean? Like he's been solid the last couple of weeks, so he's back for sure. He said too many good things.
I mean, every time he's brought that up, or I guess the last two times in this context, so the teleconference last week and then the presser, he always says that, like, Peyton's played solid.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, he said earlier in the year, he told you how he played and benched him, and everybody got mad at him for how he did it, for throwing players under the bus. You had people coming out all over the place saying he throws people under the bus. He does this. He's negative. And now he's being positive about a guy and trying to, in my opinion, trying to ease it into a quarterback change the best way he can, in being conscious of the way it went last time. And now it's the opposite. But I will say this. You know what? If you win games, nobody cares what you have to say. So, or how you say it, or the tone you say it in, or the verbiage you use. If you're losing, it doesn't matter what you say. You can't say anything right. So I think that's honestly in his mind. That's what he's thinking. I got to try. I feel like we're leaning towards a change. So I've got to try to figure out a way to do this without completely poo-pooing on Peyton, because I'll get killed for that. That's what I think.
I haven't really thought about it from that angle, but that totally makes sense. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that thought process. 100%.
What do you think?
As far as, like, has he played okay?
Well, no, the whole why he's saying it, I guess. I mean, of course you don't. I mean, I understand you probably don't think he's played okay, but what do you think? I mean, what is the reason?
I don't think it's a good look. I mean, it's kind of ironic. It's like the opposite of what you just said, but like, I don't think it's a good look for you to be saying, like, yeah, your quarterback's played solid and you scored 7 points against Vanderbilt.
Yeah. I guess you're trying to say, again, I think he's trying to shield from putting all the blame on Thorne based off of what happened.
I don't think all the blame needs to go on Thorne. I don't think all the blame. I mean, I think the offense, I've said it a million times, is systematically broken. It's more than just one guy's fault that the offense stinks. It's not all Peyton's fault. Peyton has been put in a terrible situation. And if Hank or if Walker start on Saturday, like, I think they're going to be put in a not ideal situation either. It sounds like you disagree based off of that sound you just made.
I don't know that. Say that again. You said you think Peyton's been put in a bad situation. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think the first several games he had green lights. He had green lights to go out there and do what he had to do. And maybe we didn't have a 100% the personnel from an offensive line standpoint to protect him as much as he needed to, but he had green lights and he kind of blew it. And so now they've gone to this, they've gone completely away from green lights, and now he's basically got yellow light. He's got to have.
I think this is more of a semantics thing then, because, like, what I mean is
the last 4 weeks have not been in a really good spot to succeed, but I think the season in general kind of played out because of the way that he played to be the beginning part of the year.
I just don't think Peyton's skill set helps him run this offense.
That's fair.
I don't think he's a good, quick decision maker. I think he's weirdly athletic and good with his legs, and we've, like, taken that away from him this year. Like, I just don't think what's the offense around him is helping him.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. So in other words, the type of RPO offense where you're making reads and you're going, that doesn't necessarily fit him because he doesn't have that quick. Okay, I can see that. And as a head coach, like, that's your job. It's like, okay, it's almost you go out and get the talent to run your system, your scheme, but if you don't have it yet, you need to run what's best with what you got. I just don't feel like we've done that. Well, on the flip side, are we good enough to run something that's not we're clearly not good enough to run something that's not that, where it's just run over you, run play action, things like that.
I don't know, Kyle. The bar is 7 points against Vanderbilt. You're saying something else wouldn't do that either?
I don't know. I don't what with this, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? Run the ball? What do you run the ball more? We had like 2 yards of carry after that first big run from Jarquez. I don't know.
Do what you did last year.
I almost feel like
you scored more points last year.
I almost feel like if you would have kept, I almost feel like it would have been better, maybe not for long term, but just for this season, if you would have kept the offense from last year. If maybe you kept Philip Montgomery for one more year before you eventually turned it over to Freeze to be the primary play caller. But I think they just thought they could build around Thorne, and it's just not working.
Yeah, and there is, like, it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah,
too. Like, the coaching staff was wrong, and now you can't be wrong and not do anything to, like, avoid that again. You got to be wrong and you got to learn. And so does that mean they go, get a big quarterback in December? I don't know, but they've got to do something. Or do they make, changes to the offensive staff and, Freeze does the whole CEO thing and they get a big OC? Like, I don't know, but you've got to do something different or this season was a waste.
Yeah, completely.
Right.
And I think there's no way you can not make changes on this offensive staff, I think.
Yeah,
and I don't know what that is. I don't know that you go as extreme as to hiring a full-time play caller, but definitely you got to stop hearing wide receivers keep running the wrong routes. You got to stop hearing offensive linemen are missing assignments. You got to stop hearing those things. Clearly, there's something being lost in translation, and you got to figure out, is that a coaching thing? Is it a system thing? Whatever it is, but you can't do the same thing next year, at all. Period.
Right. And that's like, there's so much wrong with the offense. You got to fix it.
For sure.
Man, Auburn basketball, they look so good. And they play tomorrow night. What can we expect? What are we looking for? That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Kyle, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel?
Can't do it, won't do it.
Nope, can't even imagine it. The line has moved a little bit. Auburn was a 24.5 point favorite. Now they're a 23.5 point favorite. It's a lot of points. I don't know if I'm picking Auburn to cover this game quite yet.
I mean, what about the offensive output has led you to believe that that's something that would be feasible? The only difference, the only thing that could possibly work is they're really bad, at stopping the run. And Auburn does that really well at times. So, but yeah,
if we choose to do it,
it would be hard for me to see. It would be hard for me to take that line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm staying away from it. But if I had to pick it right now, I'd probably take ULM plus 23.5 if I had to. I had to take it. Hey, head over to FanDuel.com. Right now, you can bet $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's over at FanDuel.com. Final few moments on today's Locked On Auburn, the Auburn basketball team. The number 5 team in the latest edition of the AP poll that was released yesterday. After taking down, you think so? Number 1 on KenPom. Yeah. It's so funny. The poll voters always use KenPom as an argument when Auburn should be ranked higher, and they were like, "Well, they're 7th in KenPom, whatever." Like the year with Jabari and Walker. But now when we're number 1 in KenPom, it's like, well, hold on, the season's young.
No, and the only reason is because of it's the prior week was released to start off the year. So like you can't say, "Oh, we were wrong." So we're just going to slide you up a little bit. It's still a big jump from 11 to 5. I mean, that's a pretty big jump.
Actually a little surprised they jumped us that much, if I'm being honest, because that's a major jump.
Yeah, I was expecting 7 or 8, to be honest.
But it's like they would have had to have dropped Houston more if they did that. And like Houston doesn't deserve that. Like Houston's a good basketball team.
Yeah.
So was that one? I mean, that was one of the best games I've watched in a long time.
The last 15 minutes were just theater. I think there was 13 lead changes or something like that in the last.
Yeah, that sounds right.
The last 3 quarters of the second half. I mean, it was insane. It was insane. And then, those guys hitting 6 straight free throws at the end. You had Chad starting it off, and then you had Denver, then you had Tahad, and then just the whole explosion from Tahad and Janai, and the defense on both sides of the ball, both sides of the court playing just incredible defense. Like those
I
teams.
mean, that was an Elite Eight basketball game.
Easy.
Like that's what it felt
atmosphere
like.
And everything. Not only game, but the fans were great. It was awesome. I mean, I've not had that much fun watching a basketball game, and I don't remember exactly how long. I mean, it's just
especially like the second game of the season, and you already from an experience standpoint, like that's gotta help this team. And like obviously the win is big, but just as far as everything about battling through adversity and being down some guys, and then you obviously do what you did against the best defense in college basketball. Like,
so Auburn basketball, like we can create a meme out of nowhere. So like the two things now that are going to be memes the whole year is going to be airplanes and horseplay. Like that's going to be.
Well, then I love that Dylan goes live on Instagram and he's like, what do you think was going to happen when you locked a lot of dogs on a plane? It's like,
and then they're doing airplanes on the court after they win. Like that is, I want to be mad at it, but it's like, it's just too funny. It's like, it's just hilarious. And then the best one was, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a big analytical guy and maybe even a handicapper on games. And he said he's created a new metric. It's called the horseplay metric. He said, and it's just automatically adds 8 points. I don't know. I have no sample size, but 1. And so whenever he's ranking his teams, he puts a horse head emoji beside Auburn for horseplay. Oh man, it's just this team, man, that they just always seem to create something fun. Like you had the peacocks a while back, and now it's going to be horseplay and airplanes. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and then Auburn basketball is like whoever runs the social account, like I hope they lean into it. But all the memes of like it was the AI generated thing, and it was like all these horses sitting on a plane with Auburn jerseys.
Yeah. Bruce was on the field of 68 this morning, and I think he kind of wants everybody to stop talking about it like as soon as possible. But based off of I don't think he thinks it's nearly as funny, understandably so, as most others do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't have like the most vocal person on your team saying, "What do you think is going to happen when you lock a lot of all the dogs in the plane or whatever?" Like,
when you have like the FAA and the FBI and all involved in like investigating this thing, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, you might want to keep your mouth shut on that. But then they just go in and beat the number one or whatever they were ranked. They beat
they're number one on KenPom. Now Auburn is
KenPom team in the country.
So they play Kent State tomorrow, 7:00 tip at Neville, and then on the 18th they host North Alabama and Neville, 8:00 tip. What do we need to see from this team over these next two games before they head to Maui to take on a very good Iowa State team?
This is what I think we need to see. Okay, number one, Tafad Pettiford was not meant to be a point guard this year. Like there was no plan really for him to be the feature point guard.
Sure.
Okay. So now it seems like he's your guy. And he can do it from the point guard position. He doesn't have to just be a 2 guard to get those looks. He can create offense and facilitate the offense at the same time. So
yeah, sure.
Over the next 2 weeks, I think you really need to figure out the rotations with him being the primary point guard. I love JP Pegues. I love I love Denver Jones, but this guy's just better at point guard. They have roles. It makes Denver a much better 2 guard if he doesn't have to play point guard. He's not a primary point guard. He's a 2 guard scorer, shooter, slasher, and this opens up opportunities for him. So over the next 2 games, I want to get those rotations locked in before we go to Maui because they can make some noise in Maui with this kid. They really can. And
I think
the chemistry that he's already seems to have with Janai, their chemistry reminds me of early when it was Walker and Wendell. Remember Wendell and Walker had like that synced up, like they could run that pick and roll. It feels like that. It felt like that a lot at times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously the rotations can be interesting. Does everybody play is going to be interesting. We don't really know what like the suspension looks like for the 2 guys that
can you imagine a flight to Maui? Jeez, we might not have a team by the time.
But let's just take like multiple flights. Let's just take more than one.
Where's that tunnel Elon was talking about? Is that tunnel ready? Where you can just go into the tunnel all the way to
It's probably not ready yet. That probably takes a minute. But yeah, I want to see more Tahad. I mean, we saw what he did against Houston, but then like against Vermont, he was 0 for 4. Like I want to see, like, let's get him a little bit of a streak going. I think that's gonna be big going into Maui for sure. So
for sure.
Great. Kyle, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Absolutely. Find me at the you can subscribe to our channel, our YouTube channel, The Barn Auburn. And then I'm every single day, the Top Button Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter, _Charlie_5, or you can subscribe to our message board, thebarnauburn.com. It's about to get heating up. It's about to start heating up. We're talking about Deuce. You got signing day is a month away. The portal opens in a month as well. Oh my gosh. It's just going to be, one thing after another, and you need to stay up to date, and this is the place to be.
No question. You can find all of my stuff at thebarnauburn.com as well. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.